This is the Ramana Maharshi 40 Verses on Reality Satsang, a time for self-reflection and self-inquiry. Know yourself and be always free and at peace. Welcome. I'm Richard Clarke, hosting this satsang. I'm a seeker like you, sharing what we love. I've been blessed with years of deep teaching and practice, and I bring this to this satsang. This week's reading from 40 Verses on Reality is verse 25. It comes into being equipped with a form, and as long as it retains a form, it endures. Having a form, it feeds and grows big. But if you investigate this evil spirit, which has no form of its own, relinquishes its grip on form, and takes to flight. In this metaphor, Ramana equates the I thought with an evil spirit that assumes a form, then gains power and grows bigger and bigger. When challenged, though, this evil form recedes, since it in reality has no independent existence, no form of its own. It cannot stand under the scrutiny of careful investigation, of deep self-inquiry. If you stop feeding this form, it stops growing. This is an important understanding for one interested in spiritual practice. The ego depends on you for its growth, for its strength, for its power, for its very existence. The I thought starts with the assumption, I am this body. This assumption is where the ego begins. The idea that you exist as a separate entity, a separate person. Once the idea of existing as and in a body takes hold, then this idea expands to include everything else, other people, the world, and even the idea of a higher power. As long as this thought continues, we are bound, as if by a rope that we ourselves created and tied. Seeing oneself with a form, we see others and the world with forms too. But what happens if we start to investigate these assumptions and ideas? What if we have no form? Looking within, we can see the body and everything else. All are known, and we see that we must be the knower. We know all these forms, but we can't find a form for our real identity. When we inquire, who am I? We don't find any form. When we keep going deeper with the inquiry, we come to a quiet blankness, not a form. When we inquire further, who knows even this blankness? We don't find any form, just this knowingness that we are. Does this knowingness have a body? Does it have a form? Or are we formless? We exist, and we know that we exist. But what actually exists? All we can find is consciousness and existence, always together, inseparable. Try to see if you can find one without the other. Can you find consciousness without existence? Can you find existence without consciousness? All objects are known by this consciousness existence. Objects are with form. You, the knower of all of these objects, are formless. You exist, and you are formless. Now, some notes for practice. Just start to dissolve your ideas about form. Inquire, who knows this? Then observe. Look at your body. The body is objective to you, known by you. Who knows the body? Look at your senses. Senses are known. Who knows the senses? Look at the life force pulsing within the body. This is known. Who is the knower? Look at your thoughts. Again, thoughts are known. Just who knows these thoughts? Look even to your sense of yourself, your ego. This ego is also known. You know this imagined person. Who knows the ego? Keep inquiring, who am I? And who knows? And for whom is this inquiry? Now on to our videos for the week. Next we have Ādyaśakti, and this is an excerpt from a series that he did also on this same writing. Here he is talking about verse 25. Ādyaśakti is now living in Tiruvannamalai, and I've gotten to know him through Facebook, and I feel like he is a friend. Here we have him talking.
Namaste. So this episode is about the ego and how the ego forms and maintains itself. And surprisingly enough, it's exactly in agreement with the Buddha's teaching. So we should know. After watching all these videos, you should know by now, right? You should know, and not just intellectually, not just by words, but by experience, by looking into yourself and by observing, where does this ego arise? Where does it come from? How does it form? How does it maintain itself? And how does it disappear? The ego is a transient thing because its existence is dependent on other things. Try to understand. It cannot have real existence because it is always in relation with one or more forms. And of course, the principal form is the body. The body comes into existence at a certain stage. Therefore, it is also unreal. It is also just a dream. And then the ego grasps or clings to this body as I. So what is the ego? A dream within a dream. The world is a dream. The body is a dream. The ego is a dream. Yet people spend so much time and energy trying to build up this ego by giving it more and more objects to feed on. We described this process in detail in the episodes on the Mula Pariyaya, the root sequence of how the ego creates itself, or how the mind actually creates the ego by sleight of hand. Did you ever watch a magician? Well, if you watch the magician from the point of view of the audience, you will never get to see how he does his tricks. Because he sets everything up very carefully to conceal the actual means by which he pulls a rabbit out of a hat or whatever. However, if you go backstage and you look through the curtain behind the magician, you can very easily see how he does his tricks. The hidden trapdoors and the strings that he pulls and so on, where he stashes his extra deck of cards. So in the same way, depending on our point of view, we can actually see how the mind operates. If we take the point of view of the audience who want to be cheated, everybody knows a magician is cheating. There is no real magic in this world. Everything is explainable by the laws of physics. But because the magician is expert at misleading our attention to make us look over there when he's doing something over here, therefore he is able to cheat us. He's able to make it seem like he's doing the impossible. But if we, again, go behind the magician, where he hasn't prepared people to look, we can very easily see it's sleight of hand. He's got the card hidden up his sleeve, and he makes a certain motion with his hand and it comes out. Isn't it? So depending on the point of view that we take, if we take the ordinary point of view, where we're not critical of the ego, where we're not even suspecting the ego is doing anything wrong, then the ego will always be able to deceive us. We'll never see through it. Just like if we sit in front of the television all day, we might think that that's a window into a little room with all these little people running around. But if we go around the back and take the cover off, we can see, oh, it's just a bunch of electronics. It's just an illusion, in other words. So in the same way, if we look at the ego from the angle of analytical intelligence, how is the ego functioning? How is it created? How is it maintained? We see that it's always dependent on grasping onto forms other than itself. It has no form. It's like a mirror that can cling. And when some form comes in front of it that it likes, it assumes the shape of that form and then clings to it. This is my form. And because this is my form, well, then I must exist, right? That's an inductive conclusion. So our ordinary view of life is just like the people who sit out in front, the audience at the magic show. They're getting entertained by the magician and they can never see how he does his tricks. But once we start listening to this teaching, once we start taking the point of view of the jnani, one who knows, then we can see, like going behind the curtain at the magic show, exactly how the mind does its tricks. And after that, it can never fool us anymore. We can never be entertained. Huh? Just like once we know how the magician does his tricks, he's not going to entertain us anymore. Because now we just think that, oh, he's a cynical rascal who's profiting off the ignorance of his audience. In the same way, the mind is just another cynical rascal exploiting us being the self, the pure awareness within, and putting on this whole magic show of the body and the mind and all this stuff happening. But the price of admission is karma, being stuck in samsara, the wheel of birth and death. And in the succeeding episodes, and especially in the esoteric teaching series, we're going to go deep into exactly how this works. So just like once you know how a car engine works, then it can never mystify you. You could never think that it was magic, or a telephone or a TV. You could never think that they're magic because you know basically how they work. You know you could take one apart and fix it and put it back together again. And actually we do this all the time. We actually know all these things deep down, but we forget them. They get covered over by the mind's tricks. So this teaching is all about how to remove those tricks, how to see through the indirection of the mind, how to penetrate the sleight of hand, the magic of the mind, and see the real truth. Om Tat Sat. Om Harihi Om.
And now we have Nome with a dialogue. If the I is formless, who experiences what?
Yes, if the I has form, then other forms are seen. If the I is formless, who experiences what? If we try to determine what it is, whatever the it is, there'll be no end. Conclusive knowledge, truly Vedanta, final knowledge, is found in the knowledge of oneself. Better than meditating upon an object is meditating upon the nature of the meditator. Bhagavan's instructions are sublime. They're perfect in their clarity, and they are all fulfilling. In any one passage, no matter how small the passage is, he shows both the reality and, out of compassion, the means to realize it as well. All that without deviating ever from the absolute, non-dual truth. And all of that is given within the shining context of His grace. It's amazing.
It's so profound, and as he was mentioning, it's so deep. It has to. I know that the sadhana is to make it steady and continuous. And pull myself back. And it needs intense amount of discrimination and dispassion. another thing that Bhagwan was mentioning was you have to have no likes and dislikes, because if something's different things go on that which is, continuous and non-changing, why are you bothering about all the different things that are going on? Just abide in what is the unchanging self.
Again, if one knows where the source of happiness is, likes and dislikes are naturally transcended. After all, your likes are all the places where you think happiness can be found. And your dislikes are all those things that you think are threatening to your happiness. But as existence does not come from another, happiness does not come from another. And as existence cannot cease to exist, likewise happiness can never be threatened.
Always the source of the identity of I. If the I is identified rightly, it's continuous that I am the body, then I will have this like and this dislike, or this discomfort with the disease, or the happiness or whatever else it is, a suffering. But when there is no
if there's an I, an embodiment, etc., there will be suffering. If there is no such misidentification, suffering becomes utterly impossible. Being is bliss, as was mentioned before. Can bliss suffer? There exists that in you which is already transcendent of all likes and dislikes. It is the real self. All that is necessary is to know it as it is. It's a knowledge of identity, not objective knowledge. So therefore, in your inquiry, do not treat the self as if it is distinct from yourself. Rather, by the inquiry, dissolve the very notion of yourself in that which is the self. Yes, it takes keen discrimination, continuous knowledge, and detachment from all that's unreal. But this is not beyond one's capacity. He said that what he realized was possible for all. That all includes you. If the discrimination were to be a thought process, it would be difficult or impossible to make it continuous. But that which discriminates, that is to say, true knowledge, is thought transcendent. That which can discern the distance or the difference between a thought and yourself is not a thought. So while on the one hand, speaking of continuous discrimination is indicative of intensity of sadhana, on the other hand is actually something quite natural. It's not natural to be ignorant. Indeed, you being knowledge itself, ignorance is completely unnatural for you, which is why you don't like it. So use the knowledge that is inherent in consciousness itself, and with your own light discriminate, always, what in truth you are. This does not require you to think about it. Thoughts about it are all right, But the discrimination itself, the actual inquiry, is quite beyond the level of thought. Inside you.
All right. And now we're going to have a short meditation, a self-inquiry. Breathe in and breathe out. Long, slow breaths. Notice the breath as it comes in, then as it goes out. And notice that you exist. You exist, and you know that you exist. Now, inquire, investigate within yourself. Are you this body? Which part of the body could you be? Are you the whole body? Or just a part? The body is objective. The body is known. Who is the knower? Who knows this body? And this inquiry, for whom is this inquiry? Is it for the mind? We're inquiring into the mind. So it's not for the mind. This inquiry must be for that within us that knows. Who is this knower? For whom is the inquiry? Who am I? What is the nature of my identity? I exist. What exists? All right. Let's close with a short chant. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. Peace, peace, peace. Thank you for letting me share this teaching with you. This series on Ramana's 40 verses on reality will continue in the following weeks. If this satsang was of interest to you, I have more, a free book site, a YouTube site, and my blog. The URLs will be on screen next. Namaste.